We had spent 312 years teaching the threshold gate to reject anything that could not survive it, and then a human woman walked through its killing field smiling in 11 seconds. My name is Vare 7, though everyone at the Karen Military Academy calls me Vare because nobody has the patience to pronounce the resonance correctly. I am a Cathari, 2 meters and 14 centimeters tall, 93 kilograms of dense gray muscle, over a flexible carbon lattice skeleton, with 4 fingers on each hand, and a jaw strong enough to crack the shell of a moon crab. I have served as a threshold assessor for 19 cycles. My official occupation is Senior Environmental Combat Evaluation Officer. In less official language, I stand beside a machine designed to make soldiers regret their career choices and record whether they continue breathing afterward. The Cathari consider this a respectable profession. We are not a species known for admitting when something is unpleasant, if we can instead give it a uniform and a certificate. The threshold gate occupied the eastern wing of Karen Academy, beneath 3 kilometers of armored rock on the moon Karen 9. The chamber itself was 60 meters long, 30 meters wide, and 12 meters high, built from black ceramic composite that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. There were no windows. There were no decorative surfaces. There was only the gate, a rectangular aperture 20 meters across, surrounded by pressure regulators, atmospheric processors, kinetic emitters, thermal coils, and 47 independent emergency shutdown systems that everyone trusted completely, despite knowing that only 38 of them had ever been tested under live conditions. The gate had one purpose: it simulated hostile environments, not one environment. Hundreds. A candidate entered one side. The system measured their biological limits, selected an appropriate sequence, and altered the chamber around them. Gravity could increase. Oxygen could thin. Temperature could fall. Pressure could change. The floor could become unstable. Airborne particles could irritate exposed tissue. Artificial electromagnetic pulses could interfere with nervous systems and equipment. The gate did not care whether a candidate was brave. It did not care whether they had medals, noble ancestry, expensive armor, or a famous instructor. It cared about one thing. Could the body continue functioning? That philosophy was engraved above the entrance in ancient Cathari script. Survival is the first credential. We were proud of that sentence. Our academy brochures were less subtle. Karen produced soldiers for 42 member worlds. 96% of graduates completed active service. 89% survived their first 10 deployments. Only 7% of candidates entering the threshold program washed out before certification. Those numbers were repeated so often that nobody asked what they meant. I did not ask. Then again, I had been raised Cathari. We are excellent at surviving systems we never bother to question. The first problem began with 3 cadets who had learned that the Academy's philosophy applied differently depending on who was standing beneath it. The largest was Brack Toller, a Voran male measuring 2 meters and 56 centimeters and weighing 171 kilograms. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, and his body reflected it. Thick shoulders, reinforced joints, a secondary tendon network beneath the skin. 4 small tusks emerged from the lower jaw, and his right ear twitched whenever he became excited. Brack was rarely calm. His friend Sen Mar was a Suler, 2 meters and 3 centimeters tall, 112 kilograms, narrow-waisted and unnaturally flexible. Suler nervous systems were famous for processing threats before conscious thought, which made them excellent scouts and terrible neighbors. Sen had a forked tongue, black eyes without visible pupils, and a habit of smiling when someone else was uncomfortable. The third was Kel Var, a 6-limbed Draxon standing 1 meter and 89 centimeters tall and weighing 80 kilograms. Kel was physically smaller than the other 2, but his species had evolved with exceptional grip strength. He could hang from a ceiling beam with one hand while carrying a full equipment case in another. He also had a segmented tail that tapped against the floor whenever he was planning something unpleasant. Together, they had become what instructors called a socially dominant cohort. That was a polite phrase. The 3 of them had selected a target during their second week. Her name was Lyra Nem. Lyra was a Pellan female, 1 meter and 48 centimeters tall and 42 kilograms with a narrow frame, pale blue skin, large black eyes, and hollow bones designed for low-gravity maneuvering. Pelins evolved on a world where climbing, gliding, and spatial awareness mattered more than physical strength. Their bones were light because their ancestors had needed to remain airborne. They were not built to fight. Lyra had no natural armor, no claws, no reinforced jaw, no muscle density that could compensate. She had come to Cairn because Pelin rescue specialists were considered among the finest emergency navigators in the sector. She was brilliant. She was also alone. That distinction mattered. On day 3, Brock took Lyra's equipment case and held it above her head. "Jump," he said. Lyra stared at him. Brock laughed. I recorded the incident from 20 meters away. Official observation, minor social conflict. No intervention required. That sentence remained in my log for 6 days. On day 5, Sen blocked Lyra's access to the dining hall. "Say please." Lyra said nothing. Sen leaned closer. "Say it." A nearby cadet looked toward me. I looked at the cadet. The cadet looked away. Official observation. Candidate demonstrating insufficient social adaptation. That was my second entry. On day 7, Kel moved Lyra's sleeping unit 3 meters away from the wall and left her belongings scattered across the floor. She spent 40 minutes collecting them. Nobody helped. Official observation. Organizational discipline below cohort average. On day 9, Brack shoved her into a maintenance rail hard enough to crack the casing. She struck her shoulder. I saw it. So did Instructor Pell. Pell was a 7-foot-tall Orashi with 4 eyes and a reputation for never losing his temper. He watched Lyra pick herself up. Then he looked at Brock. "Keep it within regulations." Brock smiled. "Of course." Official observation. Physical contact remained below disciplinary threshold. I wrote that too. On day 11, Lyra's training scores dropped by 12%. On day 12, she stopped eating in the communal hall. On day 14, her reaction speed slowed by 9%. On day 15, she failed a balance exercise she had previously completed with the highest score in her class. The instructor marked her as fatigued. Nobody marked why. On day 17, Brock cornered her in the equipment corridor. This time, Sen and Kel stood beside him, 3 against 1. Lyra was holding a medical scanner. Brock took it. "You're not using this anymore," Lyra said. "Give it back." He raised an eyebrow. "Or what?" There was silence. I remember that silence more clearly than I remember the words, because that was the moment I understood something was wrong. Not with Brack, not with Sen, not with Kel, with us. We were standing there, 7 cadets, 2 instructors, 1 security drone, and nobody moved. A Valori cadet named Tesh took 1 step forward. Kel turned his head. Tesh stopped. Another cadet, Rune, whispered, "Someone should report this." Instructor Pell answered without looking at him, "Then report it." Rune said nothing. Lyra eventually retrieved the scanner when Brock became bored. She walked away. Her performance that week fell 23%. The official report stated, "Candidate experiencing adjustment difficulties." The Academy's washout rate remained unchanged, 7%. That number comforted me. Numbers are very useful when you want to feel innocent. We told ourselves the threshold philosophy demanded hardship because war demanded hardship. We told ourselves soldiers who could not handle pressure would fail under real conditions. We told ourselves Cairn was not a place for weakness. I had personally approved 46 washouts. I considered myself fair. That was before the human arrived. The notification appeared on my console at 6:14 station time. Transfer order, human female. I remember reading it twice. Humans were rare in our sector, not because they were powerful, quite the opposite. Most military databases classified them as medium gravity, oxygen breathing, soft tissue bipeds with no significant natural weapons. Their homeworld was Earth. Gravity, 1 standard. Atmosphere, nitrogen-oxygen dominant. Average surface temperature, moderate. Natural armor, none. Natural claws, none. Natural venom, none. Natural electroreception, none. Natural night vision, poor. Natural regenerative capacity, poor. Natural lifespan, unremarkable. The database had once classified humans as generalist organisms with limited specialized adaptations. I believed that phrase. Then Lieutenant Mara Venn entered my evaluation chamber. She was 1 meter and 78 centimeters tall, 73 kilograms, compact athletic build, dark hair cut short enough to remain above the collar, brown eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 ordinary human face. She wore a plain gray academy transfer uniform with a small silver rank marker at the throat. No armor, no visible weapon, no enhanced limbs, no breathing apparatus, no ceremonial equipment, nothing. Brack looked at her and laughed. That's the human? Mara looked at him. Yes. Sen smiled. I expected something larger. Mara glanced down at herself. So did I. A few cadets laughed. She did not. I asked her for identification. She handed me her transfer slate. Lieutenant Mara Venn, Expeditionary Combat Division, 31 years old, 48 confirmed deployments. I paused. 48 was unusual, not impossible, just unusual. You understand Karen's threshold requirements? Yes. Have you completed an equivalent environmental assessment? Several. How many? Mara thought for a moment. 36. Brack snorted. Humans exaggerate. Mara looked at him. I usually undercount. That was the first time I noticed the room becoming quieter when she spoke. Not because she was loud. She wasn't. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was something about it, a lack of performance. Everyone else in that room was trying to appear dangerous. Mara wasn't trying to appear anything. I told myself I had forgotten about her by the end of the shift. That was not true. I remembered her because she smiled. Not constantly, not arrogantly, only once. When the gate rejected her initial biometric scan, the system displayed, unable to establish species baseline. Mara looked at the screen. Then she smiled. That's new. The gate recalibrated. No one laughed. The following days returned to normal. Brack continued harassing Lyra. Sen continued watching. Kel continued assisting. I continued recording. Mara attended classes. She asked questions. She completed drills. She did not seek attention. She did not threaten anyone. She did not intervene. For 3 days she was almost invisible. Then something changed. I noticed it during a routine atmospheric calibration. Mara was standing near the far wall while Brack argued with an instructor. She was doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet I suddenly felt uncomfortable. My skin tightened. My secondary heartbeat accelerated. The air seemed colder. I looked toward the human. She was staring at Brack. Her jaw was slightly tightened. Her hands were relaxed. Her posture was straight. She did not move. She did not speak. And somehow that was worse. Cathari hunters learn to recognize the stillness before an animal charges. It is not aggression. Aggression is movement. Stillness is calculation. I checked the environmental sensors. Temperature normal. Pressure normal. Radiation normal. Electromagnetic activity normal. I checked Mara's biometrics. Heart rate, 61. Respiration, 11. Stress indicators, negligible. That should have reassured me. It did not. The next morning, Brack pushed Lyra again. This time, Mara was present. She watched Lyra fall. She watched the medical scanner skitter across the floor. She watched Brack laugh. Then she looked at me. I knew immediately that something had ended. Not because she looked angry. She didn't. She looked disappointed. That was worse. Mara walked toward us. 1 step, then another. Her boots struck the floor with a quiet, even rhythm. The room seemed to shrink around her. Brack straightened. Problem? Mara stopped 4 meters away. Yes. Brack smiled. What's your problem? Mara pointed at Lyra. Leave her alone. Brock laughed. Sen laughed. Kel laughed. Even two cadets near the wall smiled nervously. Mara didn't. Brock stepped toward her. You don't give me orders. Mara nodded. Correct. He frowned. Then why are you talking? Because I'm giving you a warning. His ears twitched. Or what? Mara looked at the wall clock, then back at him. 3. The room went silent. Brock's smile disappeared. Excuse me? 2. I stood up. I don't know why. Maybe instinct, maybe training, maybe because some primitive part of my brain had finally understood what the rest of me refused to accept. Brock moved. 1. He swung his right arm. Mara stepped inside the strike. That was all. There was no dramatic leap, no roar, no impossible speed. She simply moved. Her left hand caught Brock's wrist. Her right forearm struck the inside of his elbow. His arm folded. She rotated her hips, used his momentum, and threw him over her shoulder. He hit the floor hard enough to crack one of the ceramic tiles. The room froze. Mara released his wrist immediately. Brock tried to stand. She stepped behind him. Rear control. Knee against the upper spine, arm secured, pressure applied. Brock stopped moving. You're hurting him, Sen said. Mara looked at him. No. Sen's forked tongue appeared. You just threw him. Correct. You could have killed him. I could have. Brock struggled. Mara increased pressure by perhaps 5%. He stopped. She looked down. You're done. Brock said nothing. Mara released him. Sen moved next. He was faster than Brock. Sular nervous systems were designed for rapid response. He crossed the distance in less than a second. Mara sidestepped. His claws caught empty air. She seized his forearm. Pivot, elbow, knee, trip. Sen hit the ground. Mara pinned him with one knee. He tried to twist. She adjusted. He stopped. I have fought Sular before, she said. Sen breathed heavily. How many? 6. You won? Yes. All 6? Mara nodded. Different circumstances. Then she let him go. Kel backed away. He was the smallest of the 3. He was also the first to understand. He raised both hands. No. Mara stopped. Kel shook his head. I'm not doing this. Mara nodded. Good. He lowered his hands. The confrontation had lasted 11 seconds. 11. The threshold gate required 12 minutes of continuous exposure before an assessment could be considered meaningful. Brock had lasted 11 seconds. So had the entire hierarchy that had protected him. Mara turned toward the instructors. Toward me. Toward everyone who had watched. Her expression remained calm. You have a regulation against unauthorized physical assault. I swallowed. Yes. You have a reporting requirement for repeated harassment. Yes. You have surveillance records. Yes. And you knew. No one answered. Mara nodded once. That's what I thought. She walked away. Lyra stared after her. Then for the first time in 17 days she smiled. The room did not know what to do with that. I did. Nothing. Because we had been trained for violence. We had not been trained for shame. That evening, I opened Maraven's official file. I expected military records. I did not expect what I found. 36 environmental deployments, 48 confirmed combat deployments, 7 high-atmosphere insertions, 14 rescue operations, 3 confirmed hostile ship boardings, 29 personnel recovered alive, 16 wounded civilians extracted from active combat zones, 2 spinal fractures, 1 collapsed lung, 4 broken ribs, a severed tendon repaired without evacuation, 17 commendations, 9 citations for civilian rescue, no disciplinary actions, no recorded refusal of orders, no confirmed lethal action outside authorized combat parameters. I kept scrolling. The deployment list continued. Mountain worlds, flood worlds, desert worlds, vacuum-adjacent stations, toxic atmospheres, high-gravity colonies, low-gravity colonies, Arctic zones, jungle zones, radiation-damaged habitats, places where even our strongest species required environmental armor. Mara had entered some of them wearing equipment no heavier than a standard human combat suit. At the bottom of the file was a psychological evaluation. I read it twice, then a third time. The final assessment consisted of one sentence. Subject does not seek conflict. Subject has simply become very difficult to frighten. I sat alone in my office for several minutes. Then I looked at the Academy's survival statistics. 96% graduation, 89% first deployment survival, 7% washout. Numbers I had once considered proof of excellence. Now they looked like excuses. The hearing was held 2 days later. Brack, Sen, and Kell stood before the disciplinary board. They were not expelled. That surprised me. They were reassigned. Brack lost his leadership qualification. Sen was removed from field command eligibility. Kell was transferred to a logistics cohort. Their punishment was structural. They had spent years believing power meant making others afraid. Now the institution simply removed their access to power. The instructors were treated differently. Instructor Pell received a formal performance review. I received one too. The senior authority overseeing the hearing was Admiral Sarek Vaughn. He was old even by Cathari standards. 2 meters and 20 centimeters, 128 kilograms. Scar tissue covered the left side of his neck. He listened to our explanations without interruption. When I finished describing the incidents, he looked at me. "Why didn't you intervene?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He nodded. "Exactly." Then he looked at the instructors. "You all used the same phrase." Nobody moved. "Adjustment difficulties." He tapped the report. "Do you know what humanity's greatest survival adaptation is?" No one answered. "Not endurance, not aggression, not intelligence." He paused. "Cooperation." I looked down. Admiral Vaughn continued. "Earth is not the strongest world in this sector. It is not the coldest, hottest, heaviest, or most toxic. Humans have no claws worth mentioning. Their bones are fragile. Their skin tears. Their bodies require oxygen. They evolved on a world where almost everything that could eat them had teeth." Nobody spoke. "And they survived." He looked directly at me. "Not because Earth was gentle." His voice became quieter. "Because humans learned that surviving alone is expensive." The room remained silent. Vaughn closed the file. "Your threshold was designed to measure whether a soldier could survive hostile conditions." He looked around the room. "You forgot to measure whether the soldier beside them could." That sentence hurt more than any disciplinary mark. Reforms began the following cycle. The harassment reporting protocol changed first. Previously, incidents required direct complaints from the victim. Now instructors were required to report observed misconduct automatically. The second change was the threshold scoring system. Physical survival remained important, but cooperation, intervention, and protection of weaker personnel became measurable criteria. The third change was smaller. Every instructor had to stand in the corridor during communal training at least once each shift. Not to supervise combat, to watch people. Within 6 months, the Academy's washout rate fell from 7% to 4.8%. Reported harassment increased by 312%. That number looked terrible on the first report. Admiral Vaughn called it the first honest number we've had in years. Lyra's performance recovered, then surpassed her previous scores. She graduated with the highest navigation rating in her cohort. She later joined the Emergency Rescue Division. I wrote her recommendation myself. I did not mention the corridor. I did not mention Brack. I simply wrote the truth. Candidate demonstrates exceptional spatial intelligence, recovery under stress, and an unusual ability to remain useful when frightened. Mara remained at Charon for another 8 weeks. She trained with Lyra, not as a guardian, not as a commander, as a teammate. I watched them once from the observation deck. Lyra was struggling with a weighted navigation harness. Mara adjusted one strap. "Too tight?" Lyra nodded. Mara loosened it. Better? Yes. Good. Then Mara handed her the harness. Try again. No speech, no lesson, just patience. That was when I finally understood what frightened me about her. It was not that she could defeat Brock. Many beings could. It was that she had the power to do it and seemed uninterested in proving it. One afternoon, I found her outside the threshold chamber. She was looking at the gate. I stood beside her. I owe you an apology, I said. She glanced at me. For what? I almost laughed. For approximately 17 incidents. She considered that. That's a large number. Yes. I accept. I blinked. That's all? Mara shrugged. What else would you like? I don't know. She looked at the gate. You were trained to believe surviving hardship makes people stronger. Yes. Sometimes it does. She paused. Sometimes it just teaches strong people that nobody will stop them. I looked at her. She smiled faintly. Humans learned that lesson a long time ago. How long? She thought. Probably longer than your academy has existed. I laughed. She laughed too. It was the first time I had heard her do it. It sounded ordinary. That somehow made it more powerful. Years later, I still worked at Quran. I never stopped being a threshold assessor. But I changed the way I watched the gate. Before Mara arrived, I measured the body. After Mara left, I measured the person. The difference was smaller than I expected, and larger than I could explain. The gate still rejected candidates. It still increased gravity, still removed oxygen, still froze floors, still simulated pressure failure and atmospheric collapse. It remained exactly what it had always been, a machine. The thing that changed was us. Sometimes I still review the old records. I see the statistics. 96% graduation, 89% first deployment survival, 7% washout. Then I remember Lyra standing alone in the corridor. I remember Brock holding her equipment above her head. I remember my own hand entering the report. Minor social conflict. No intervention required. I deleted that phrase from every template I controlled. There is one more record I keep. It is not official. It is a small note I wrote after Mara left. The date is meaningless now. The paper is worn. The words are simple. The gate was never the thing we were supposed to survive. I used to think the threshold measured whether someone could walk through hell. Now I understand what it really measures. Not how much pain you can endure. Not how much violence you can deliver. Not whether you can stand alone. The real test is what you do when someone else cannot. Mara Venn walked through the threshold smiling because she had already survived the harder test. She had learned how to remain human after the universe gave her every reason not to be. And that was something our perfect academy statistics had never known how to measure. The gate still stands beneath Karen 9. Black walls, cold lights, 20-meter aperture, 47 emergency systems, 312 years of tradition. And above it, we kept the old words. Survival is the first credential. But beneath them, after Mara left, someone added another line. We survive together. Nobody knows who carved it. I do. I simply never bothered to correct the record. Because sometimes the best thing an institution can do is finally admit that the human was right.